Late at night, in the dark, locked aisles of a toy store, a man was riding a bicycle. He glided past the shelves, past the dolls with their glassy, staring eyes. Then he stopped in a corner and ate baby food out of a jar with a spoon. The Spider-Man posters he taped to the wall watched over him. This man was one of the most wanted fugitives in the country. Police were hunting him street by street, state by state, and he was living in the one place nobody would ever think to look inside the walls of a bright, cheerful store where children came to pick out their toys. His name was Jeffrey Allen Manchester, but the world wouldn't remember him by that name. The world gave him a far stranger one, Roofman, the man who came in through the roof. And here's the thing, what I'm about to tell you isn't a movie script. It really happened. And believe me, the most unbelievable part hasn't even started yet. Let's go back to the beginning. Jeffrey Manchester was born in 1971 in Sacramento, California. He grew up in a small town called Rancho Cordova and went to high school there. He was an ordinary kid. Nobody who knew him could have guessed his name would one day be splashed across headlines from coast to coast. After high school, he joined the Army. And not just any unit, the elite 82nd Airborne Division. There, he learned the hardest skills a soldier can learn. How to rappel down the side of a tall building, how to handle a weapon, how to read a room in seconds, how to wait, how to never ever panic. His instructors taught him all of that to serve his country. But Manchester would save those skills for something else entirely. He married at 20, he had 3 kids. For a while, things looked fine, but by 1999, the marriage was over. He was divorced. What was left behind was a stack of bills, 3 children, and a growing sense of desperation. And here's the strange part. Before he ever turned to crime, Manchester had worked at a McDonald's. He knew those restaurants inside out, the kitchen, the registers, the walk-in freezer, the rhythm of the morning shift. So maybe it's no surprise that when desperation closed in, the first idea that came to him was the very place from his past, those golden arches. But he wasn't going to walk in through the front door like everyone else. He was going in from above. The first robbery happened in November 1998. Manchester would scope out a McDonald's in daylight, study the layout, then come back under cover of night. He'd climb onto the roof with a drill. Patiently, he'd cut through the tar, the plywood, the insulation, until he'd carved a clean hole about 2 feet wide. Then, exactly the way the Army had taught him, he'd lower himself down through it. But he didn't act right away. This is what set him apart from an ordinary thief. He was never in a hurry. Once inside, he'd hide in the bathroom, shut the door, and wait for hours, sitting in the dead silence of the empty restaurant, waiting for the morning crew to arrive. By the time staff unlocked the doors and flipped the lights on, by the time the fryers started crackling and the milkshake machines began to hum, he was already inside, a ghost nobody had seen. And then he'd step out, with a small gun in his hand. Now hold on a second, because what he did next was even stranger than the robbery itself. Manchester never shouted, he never panicked, he spoke softly, calmly. He'd tell the workers to stay calm and guide them gently toward the walk-in freezer. And before they stepped into that sub-zero cold, he'd suggest they grab their jackets first. "You'll get cold," he'd say. Then, he'd empty the registers without rushing, sometimes even helping himself to a coffee or a quick bite, and slip back out the way he came up through the ceiling into the night. The people he robbed would say the same thing for years afterward. He was unbelievably polite. Like he wasn't an armed robber at all, more like a courteous neighbor who just happened to be borrowing the cash registers. One witness called him unfailingly courteous. Manchester had an obsession: spatial patterns. He was fascinated by mazes, hidden passages, the layouts of buildings. Show him a floor plan and he'd solve it in his head instantly. And every McDonald's looked the same. That made it easy, like walking through your own house in the dark. The first time, you bump into a wall. By the 10th time, you know every corner by heart. So he didn't stop. One restaurant, then another, then another. His army postings flung him from one end of the country to the other, and everywhere he landed, he did the same thing. Cut the roof, drop in, wait, rob them politely, vanish. The robberies stretched from California all the way east to Massachusetts. Authorities would eventually tie him to robberies in at least 6, by some accounts, 9 states. Somewhere between 40 and 60 of them. His total haul had long since passed $100,000, and he left almost nothing behind. No fingerprints, no usable camera footage, no evidence worth a thing. The police were going out of their minds because there was an obvious signature, but no face. Every witness described the same man: polite, calm, soft-spoken, a gentleman. But nobody had any idea who that gentleman was. Reporters had already given him a nickname: the man who came in through the roof, Roofman. And Manchester felt untouchable. He'd admit it years later. I had it in my mind that I was so smart that I couldn't possibly get caught. I had everything planned out. For a while, he was right. For years, he slipped through their fingers. But every perfect plan has a crack, and Manchester's crack came down to a single word: greed. The 20th of May 2000. That day, Manchester pushed his luck too far. The night before, he'd already robbed a McDonald's in Gastonia, North Carolina. A smart man would have taken the money and disappeared. He didn't. That very same day, just hours later, he hit a second McDonald's in the nearby town of Belmont. Same method: a hole in the roof, a silent drop inside. This time, 8 employees were there. He made them lie on the floor and told one of them to open the safe. In his hands was a .22 caliber rifle. But this time, something happened that he didn't notice. One of the workers quietly hit the silent alarm. Manchester had no idea. As he calmly gathered up the cash, police cars were already rolling out from a station not far away. When he stepped outside, something felt wrong. Maybe instinct, maybe the faint wail of a siren in the distance. He started running, plunging into the trees, into the woods. But Belmont was a small town. One officer noticed a car just sitting in an empty church parking lot. That was a trick Manchester used, often leaving his car somewhere quiet near the target. A few minutes later, a man emerged from the trees and started walking toward that car. That man was Roofman. The officer hit his lights. A short chase followed. Manchester tried to slip back into the trees, but this time he was boxed in. He was caught hiding in the bushes near a water tower. The officer who caught him was named Tony Adkins. What they found on him and in his car told the whole story: an army ID, a rifle, the tools he used to cut through roofs, and $8,023 in cash. $420 of it was in change, nothing but quarters. About 2 hours later, Manchester confessed. When they asked why he did it, his answer summed up the contradictions of his whole world: for the money, to pay the bills and buy some things for my kids. Then he added, I thought it would be quick cash. In the end, I scared people and wasted the police's time too. I'm sorry for that. End. The court sentenced him to 45 years. They sent him to Brown Creek Correctional Institution in North Carolina. For most people, the story would end right there. The man was caught, he was in prison, the curtain had dropped. But for Jeffrey Manchester, the curtain was just starting to rise. Not even iron bars could strip what the army had taught him out of his head. For 4 years, Manchester behaved like a model inmate. Nobody suspected a thing. He worked in the prison's metal shop, kept his hands busy, stayed calm and cooperative. But behind that calm face, a meticulous, months-long plan was unfolding. In that shop, without anyone noticing, Manchester built a thin wooden platform, and he carefully spray painted it black. Why? Because delivery trucks came and went through the prison on a regular schedule, Manchester planned to fix that black platform underneath one of those trucks, wedged between the axles. The black paint would make him invisible in the shadows. The 15th of June, 2004. The plan went into motion. Manchester slid himself onto the platform, squeezed his body into the narrow gap beneath the truck, and waited. The truck, with no idea of the man underneath it, rolled through the prison gates. Security checks, fences, watchtowers, all of it left behind. By the time the truck hit the open road, Roofman was free. Just like on those McDonald's roofs, he'd found the weakest point in the system and quietly slipped through it. Once out, he hitchhiked about 50 miles to the city of Charlotte. He had no money in his pocket, no valid ID, no home to go to. He was a fugitive, wanted across the entire country, and he was about to put the wildest idea of his life into action. Most fugitives run. They make for the borders, hide in the woods, get as far away as they possibly can. Jeffrey Manchester decided to stay, right in the middle of a city, right in the middle of people. In Charlotte, he found a Toys R Us, you know the kind, those huge toy stores. In the back, they have enormous storage areas where the big boxes are stacked, places even the staff rarely visit. Manchester moved right into that dead zone, behind the bicycles. But he didn't just hide, he turned it into a home. He built himself a little living space. He put posters on the wall, Spider-Man among them. He brought in a baby mattress and an inflatable chair. At night, he watched movies. He kept his hunger at bay with baby food and candy from the store shelves. To stay in shape, after the store closed, he'd pick a bike off the rack and ride laps through the dark aisles. And the cleverest touch of all, he set up baby monitors to keep an ear on his surroundings. During the day, while staff and customers filled the store, he'd sit in his hideout behind the wall, listening to the sounds coming through the monitor, calculating exactly when it was safe to come out. For the first whole month, he never set foot outside. Then, on the 4th of July 2004, he ventured into the world for the first time. He took a bike from the store there were plenty to choose from and rode to a grocery store. All he wanted was a newspaper, but there he ran into someone. The man looked at him and asked, "Do I know you from somewhere?" Without missing a beat, Manchester replied, "I don't think so. Were you in the military?" When the man said no, Manchester slipped away. He figured the guy had recognized him from the news reports about the prison escape. But after that day, instead of getting scared, he got bolder. "I knew I could get caught any day, so I figured, what do I have to lose?" He'd say years later, "I just carried on like nothing was going on." He even walked into a police station once to take care of something. Nobody looked at him twice. He learned to dissolve into the crowd like any ordinary man. But Manchester didn't just live in the shadows. He built a second, complete life. He chose a new name, John Zorn. Under that identity, he went out into the world and mixed with people. He started attending Crossroads Presbyterian Church, where he volunteered. The congregation adored him. John Zorn was kind, helpful, warm. There, he met a woman named Lee Wainscott, and they started dating. He spent time with her children, brought them gifts, and you can guess where those gifts came from. Toys he lifted from the very store he was hiding in. He was giving the stolen toys to the children of the people he loved. He covered his apparent unemployment and homelessness with a clever lie. He'd whisper to people that he worked a top-secret government job, that where he lived was a restricted office building no one was allowed to enter. Nobody asked too many questions. 2 lives, 1 man. By day, the beloved and trusted John Zorn. By night, a wanted fugitive sleeping inside the walls of a toy store. As the 2004 holiday season approached, the store got busier, the aisles thick with shoppers. That raised the danger for him. So Manchester moved next door, into a shuttered, abandoned Circuit City, and set up his new living space there. But 2 lives can't run side by side forever. The beginning of the end came when Manchester gave in to that old urge once again. He'd already stolen from the Toys R Us. He'd been living in $14,000. But he wasn't satisfied. He decided to try once more. In the run-up to this final move, he did 2 strange things. First, he set fire to a Charlotte dental office where he'd had his teeth worked on. Then, to get himself a weapon, he robbed a pawn shop. On the morning of the 26th of December 2004, he put his plan into action and robbed the store again. But this time, things went wrong. 2 employees managed to slip out and alert the police. Manchester fled the scene, yes, but what he left behind gave him away. The police discovered that secret living space inside the store. The hideout behind the wall, the posters, the baby mattress, the jars of baby food, the baby monitors. It was obvious someone had been living there a long time. And when they put the pieces together, they understood the truth. The man they were looking for was the same fugitive who had escaped under a truck months earlier. Soon, Manchester's photo was airing on television. And in that moment, the mask of John Zorn fell away. Because someone recognized that face, someone who loved him. When Lee Wainscott saw the face of the man she loved on the news, her whole world collapsed. The kind man she trusted and loved was a wanted criminal, a fugitive, a lie from start to finish. At first, she refused to believe it until the police laid the evidence out in front of her, and in the end, she had a decision to make. The police asked Wayne Scott for help. Devastated as she was, she chose to do the right thing. She invited Manchester to her home for her own birthday. They were going to celebrate her 40th. Manchester walked into the trap without a hint of suspicion, but this time there was no roof to climb, no truck to slip under, no wall to hide behind. When he stepped inside, the police were waiting. And as a man who stayed polite to the very end, he didn't resist. He surrendered quietly. Wayne Scott would later describe that moment. He was very sad and humbled, and felt terrible that he'd had to deceive us. He encouraged me, told me to be strong. He wasn't angry with me. Roofman had been caught a second time. This time, the court added 40 more years on top of his sentence. The man who came in through the roof would not see a ceiling for a very, very long time. To this day, he's still serving his sentence at Central Prison in Raleigh. So what did Jeffrey Manchester think when he finally looked back on it all? When he spoke from his cell years later, there was nothing left of that supremely confident man. "I thought it was impossible for me to get caught," he said. "Obviously, I was a fool, and I did get caught." He believed it was that very overconfidence that gave him away every passing day. He'd grown a little more reckless. He once believed his crimes were victimless. "I'm not stealing their money," he told himself. "I'm stealing the store's money," but the years taught him that was a lie. "No," he said later, "it wasn't a victimless crime. I hurt those people. I hurt them emotionally." He said he still couldn't erase the faces of the people he'd robbed, that those faces haunted him. And maybe the most striking confession of all, the gun he'd pointed at people for years couldn't even fire. All that terror he created was built on a bluff. He hates the nickname. "I don't want to be known for the bad things I've done," he said. "I'm ashamed. I don't want to be called Roofman. I don't want to be called the rooftop robber. I don't want to be associated with that at all. My name is Jeff." But history had already made its decision. The man who lived inside the walls of a toy store on baby food, who gave stolen toys to children, who pointed a gun at the people he loved and then apologized to them. He would be Roofman forever. The man who came through the ceiling, the man who waited in the dark, the polite robber, the ghost behind the walls, and today, just a man in a cell.